PlayStation further details their strategy going forward, really following along the lines as to what Xbox has been doing. All right, guys, before we get into this, my goal is to hit 10K subscribers by the end of the year, and I see a lot of you are new here. If you like daily content, you like these styles of videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button. The launch of the Xbox Series XS and the PlayStation 5 has left us with a completely changing landscape in the video game industry as Xbox has continued to pursue the ecosystem strategy, getting their games onto as many platforms as possible, proving that you don't need console exclusives to sell a video game console, as we've seen the Xbox Series X and S still fly off the shelves, even though all their first-party games are going to be available on PC on day one. PlayStation 5 and Sony, when they entered into this generation, they stayed with their original strategy, which was keeping the console as the thing you have to get in order to be able to get into an ecosystem, in order to be able to play certain games. And we are seeing them now scrambling to try and completely change their strategy and go more along the lines of the Xbox strategy. And there's multiple different examples as to how they are doing this. We've already seen multiple PC releases of PlayStation games and how that has really helped the PlayStation revenues and the amount of copies they are selling via Steam. We're seeing PlayStation open up PlayStation PC and the PlayStation mobile section of their business, trying to expand in those ways because they know going forward into the future, the antiquated strategy of console exclusivity to win a generation, to be on top of the video game industry, is going away, especially with what we have seen so far. When there's any sort of issues with the supply chain whatsoever, it really hurts the market, which is why when it came to 2020 and going forward with the chip shortage, Xbox didn't get nearly as affected because they had that ecosystem where people could still jump in and play all of their games without having an Xbox Series X or S. Now, Herman Hulse, he had an interview and he went further in to PlayStation strategy going forward. And here is what he said. Further investments in areas that will strengthen the expansion onto PC, onto mobile, and into live services, that's definitely a possibility for us. And we know PlayStation has previously talked about wanting to expand out and make 12 live service games by 2026. They showed off this during the presentation for the games and network services segment of the Sony business, and you can see here through fiscal year 2025, which goes into 2026, that they're going to want to have 12 live service games. And we've seen them already move along those lines. They've made big adjustments which have pissed people off, but really shows where they are going. You think about The Last of Us and how they came out and they announced that the multiplayer part that was supposed to be a part of The Last of Us Part 2 was taken off, and it was going to be its own standalone game. They're going to turn into this big live service game. Then we look at the rumors that just recently came out with Horizon Zero Dawn and the remake stuff, and then also moving on to making a multiplayer Horizon game, which is most likely going to be a live service game. They already have MLB The Show, which is a multi-platform live service game. And they went ahead and acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion, which is probably going to be their most profitable live service game for a very long time. And this is how Sony is going to be able to attempt to compete going forward with the likes of Microsoft, a $1 trillion company who is going to be going and acquiring Activision Blizzard once the deal goes through. It's going to be very hard for them to continue to compete with a company that has all of these studios, all of these live service style of games, all these multiplayer games that are taking off, even new IPs from studios like Obsidian with Grounded, and another new IP which came out a couple of years ago, which was Sea of Thieves, which completely has exploded. It's going to be very hard for Sony to be able to compete with those styles of games, the amount of money that those bring in, with only focusing on what they currently do now really are those linear third-person single-player cinematic games. The other side of the coin that they are trying to expand on is not just video games. It's taking those IPs and putting them into movies and TV shows that they've already started with. Uncharted, The Last of Us HBO series is coming. They're going to be making Horizon show, and so on and so forth. They're going to continue along those lines of expanding their portfolio into different mediums. Now, one of the things that I've talked about multiple times on my channel is that I think PlayStation at some point soon is going to have to start releasing their games day and date into PlayStation Plus, or releasing them on PC alongside the PlayStation 5 release. I do believe that is coming, and we have a little bit more information showing that PlayStation also sees that being the future of the company when it comes to releasing games. He was speaking with YouTuber Julian Kiez. I don't know if I said his name right, but he was talking about releasing games onto PC day and date at the same time as PlayStation. And they have a take on it right now that they're going with, but I do foresee this eventually changing. And they say here that Herman Hulse confirmed that single player games from PlayStation Studios will release at least 1 year later on PC, which is not surprising considering it took a while for games like Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War to make the jump from PlayStation consoles. At the same time, all live service games will launch on day one on PlayStation and PC, a strategy that makes a lot of sense to build a strong community around any given game and potentially maximize profits with in-game purchases. And that makes a ton of sense. You're going to want to put live service games onto as many platforms as possible. When it comes to their single player games, keeping them only on PlayStation 5, I think is something they are going to eventually change. I think they will start releasing those on PC, because you take a look at games like God of War that came out years after the PlayStation release and they released on the PC platform, and how many copies they sold on PC. I don't see why they would want to restrict that right off of the bat, where you can release it on PS5 and release it on PC and you're still going to sell out PlayStation 5s. People are still going to go at PS5s to play games like God of War. But at the same time, you're going to get that market that wouldn't run out to buy a PS5 to play the game. They're just going to wait, or they're going to play something else, which we clearly saw that when they released God of War, Horizon, Uncharted, Spider-Man, all of these games years later on the PC platform. So lots of updates from PlayStation, what their strategy is. This isn't surprising. It always was something that you saw coming, whether you wanted it to happen or not, whether you wanted PlayStation games to come onto other platforms or not. They are coming to other platforms, and for gamers, that is a good thing. And honestly, if it wasn't for Xbox opening up the ecosystem with stuff like Game Pass, cloud gaming, showing the industry that you don't need to have console exclusives in order to sell your box, we would probably still be in the olden times of the video game industry, which is console exclusivity as the only way to get an advantage up on your competitor. That's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on PlayStation's strategy going forward. Do you think that they are eventually going to release their smaller single player games onto PC the same day as PlayStation 5, or launch them in to the PlayStation Plus subscription service? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here and you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.